Welcome to our presentation. Our talk today is about XLingPaper and its use of TeX Technologies. Presenting will be Andrew Black and myself, Hugh Paterson. I will be narrating. So a little bit about us. Andy is the developer of XLingPaper since 2001, and I am a bug reporter, feature requester, advocate, and user of XLingPaper since at least 2014. And my work my use of XLingPaper has brought me closer in connection with Andy and the discussions that ensue out of that. So we bring this together as Andy's the developer and myself as a user. So our goals for this presentation is first and off to say thank you to the developers of TeX technology packages, which we use. And second, then to inform the TeX community of our project and to use TeX technology. And then finally, as we present, we also want to open ourselves up to receive and consider suggestions from the TeX community on the infrastructure design of XLingPaper. And so if people in the TeX community and developer community have contributions or suggestions for XLingPaper, we are open to receiving those. So a little bit about XLingPaper. So XLingPaper is a plugin to XMLMind. XMLMind is a commercially available software for creating XML-based documents and is broadly focused on the production of technical documents. It's and XLingPaper then is a plugin to that software. XMLMind is written in Java and is cross-platform. XLingPaper follows in these software choices. And so it works on Windows, Mac, and Linux. Now, XMLMind allows for the creation of specific document types. Think of these maybe as a template in your structure design of your document. And so XLingPaper avails itself of these options and has different preformed templates for papers and books and edited volumes or specific kinds of books or papers. So there's about 6 or 7 of those. In addition to that, then there are reusable document components. So if you're working as an author across several documents and you want to reuse your glossary terms, or if you want to reuse your references section and in a similar format to what BibTeX does, if you have a database of format of references, you can use document components as well in XLingPaper. And finally, a final type of document that is in XLingPaper is a publisher style sheet, which is an XML set of values for creating a style sheet to meet publisher specifications. To look at XMLMind's interface, this is for those who might not be aware of the software. This is what it looks like. In the main screen is where the author will compose their document. And then there are 2 auxiliary screens to the right, which one is for the one with the yellow in it is for reports after processes are completed in the main document. So after you save or do a print PDF or something like this, then you get some feedback. Maybe it might be all clear, or you might have some specific errors or some things are unresolved that the user can then take actions on. There's also things there from the XMLMind interface and other little tabs in that Windows section, which allow you to insert special characters or do searches, things like that. And then the window above that, on the right-hand side, it allows for the selection of the next document component. So by component, I mean like a header or a complete section. So, section 1 or section 1.1 or the abstract. So in the document structure, there's, you have the header of the document, and then you have the main core part of the document, and you have the footer of the document. And you might have specific things like a acknowledgement section or an abstract in the header of the document, or, front matter versus or back matter, or other terms that that could be used. So what's really unique from what I've seen in different software types is that to produce a valid output document, XLingPaper restricts the input. So if you have your cursor somewhere in the software compose window, the options to the right where the green arrow is only are dynamically generated and are only allowed on the basis of a valid document type. So, and this is controlled through XML languages such as DTT or the schematron parts of XLingPaper. So the document type is then controlled and is validated with XML technologies. So basically then you can insert what needs to be or what's possible, and depending on what particular document type you're working with, different things might be possible. And this is all done through the XLingPaper schema and uses the power of XMLMind's interface to deliver that. So this is in contrast to a free text editor. It reduces the compose errors when one goes to compose a PDF from the source by limiting what one can put in the document in which places. So I think that's a great advantage over using a standard text editor. Of course, because it's based on XML, one can use the XML editing features of XMLMind. And this next screen shows that the XML view, one can also use XSL technologies to edit documents en masse or to do document-wide edits of various kinds. So the power of XML is available to authors as well if they wish to avail themselves of those tools. So to talk a little bit about XLingPaper and its design goals over the history of its development, 2001, or approaching 20 years of development. So a first design goal was to be as free as possible, so both in distribution and licensing. So that's really important to the developers, Andy primary among those, but also should be important to the user base as well. Content separated from styles, with publishers having unique style sheets expressed in XML. So when I talked about a few screens ago about the different document types, publisher style sheet is one of those, and a core idea in XLingPaper has been to keep the content independent of the final publisher style, and to differentiate those and allow the abstraction of publisher styles so that one can take a document from one publisher style to another, and give the author some flexibility in that regard. Now, of course, that is mostly typographical style choices and not so much content style choices. Different publishers have different content requirements, and no one's going to be able to automate Oxford commas. I mean, maybe Wikipedia does, but at any point, that's the goal and separation of presentation style and through publisher style sheets. But another important aspect of the XLingPaper's development path has been the low bandwidth target user group. So many of the users of XLingPaper work with minority languages in parts of the world where the internet access is either really expensive for the gigabytes or megabytes of download capacity, or there just doesn't exist internet there. And so what this is meant for development and using TeX Technologies is that TeX Live is not a viable option due to its size. And as a result, what Andy has done has been to pre-select specific packages and to package those in the XLingPaper and distribute them as a single download, so that the end users for XLingPaper only need to download XLingPaper plugin and XMLMind. Those are both available through the XLingPaper website, which there'll be a link at the end of the presentation. Now, to discuss PDF creation, XLingPaper has a couple of options. It has several different document type outputs. Among those are ePUB and XHTML and CSS. So XLingPaper directly exports to XHTML and CSS. Then there's a secondary process to convert those to ePUBs. XLingPaper also has the ability to use XMLMind .doc and .odt, which is the open office format. So you can use those export processes within XMLMind. And those are based off of XSLFO. So working with XLingPaper's XML to convert it then to XSLFO, and then using the XMLMind processes for working from XSLFO. Back in 2009, Andy began to think about adding a zLaTeX-based output to XLingPaper. And before 2009, the XSLFO process was able to be connected to RenderX and RenderX PDF output process. And that had a watermark in it. So Andy was looking for a different option than the PDF production process through RenderX. The current path for that the information travels through is that XLingPaper's native XML format then processes to a TeXML-like XML, and then that gets processed down to a zLaTeX file, and that gets processed then to a PDF. And those create really nice PDFs, and there's quite a few options in there. And I can say that with confidence as I wrote my MA thesis in this software. So the TeXML, why didn't the XLingPaper project go with TeXML? And here's the disadvantages and the design considerations that we, or primarily Andy, looked at. And that TeXML required Python, and the design requirements then would require users to install an additional copy of Python or to connect to a Python version that was compatible with the TeXML project. And so it was decided to, rather than add complexity to the install process, that it wasn't the right project or the right components for the XLingPaper project. And in addition to that, there were some technical issues that XLingPaper needed some extensions for formatting white space more finely than what appeared to be available through the TeXML options. So Andy did implement certain mapping of using Java, so XMLMind is written in Java, and the core of the plugin is written in Java. So using some Java code, Andy did create some custom actions inside the plugin to implement TeX characters and some things like that. So there was some tweaking using Java for that, but TeXML wasn't the right solution for us, at least us at this time, or us in our knowledge at this time. Another big area, so XLingPaper is targeted to users who are writing linguistic documents where the subject matter is of a linguistic nature. And often these are dissertation writers, theses writers, and grammar writers of books that are on languages and things like this. So languages or linguistics. And there is a well-established community within the TeX community of linguists using TeX technologies, and LingTech is one of those groups. And so it was decided that some of the capabilities that had been developed prior to 2009 to work with the RenderX components were easier to bring to a PDF without adding additional packages from LingTech or the linguistic community. So most of what exists inside of the packages that are used for XLingPaper are not from the linguistic community of authors and publishers who use TeX technology. That is to say, we're fairly generic. But these are the 20 packages that we do use in the XLingPaper distribution. So attach file 2, book tabs, calc, color table, e-toolbox, fancy header, font spec, footnote miscellaneous or hyperref, lineo, long table, landscape, MD frame, the multi-row, normal, EM, polyglossia, set space, tabular X, and XLT extra. So occasionally other packages are considered and tested when specific features require them, or a use case can be developed saying that it's necessary, and another way of figuring out how to typeset it isn't figured out. One kind of looking back, there's a package called Memoir, which is really nice and powerful. And that, if Andy had known about that before, he said that he might have implemented that instead of some of the custom TeX commands that he developed. And these are some of the custom TeX commands that he's developed. And some for the table of contents, lists, examples, indices, such as in the back matter, interlinear examples, block quotes, and table headers. So these are some of the things that are custom TeX commands connected in the XLingPaper software. And I think what's one of the important things to discuss and present is the typesetting tasks that XLingPaper users often encounter. So that is, are we doing formulas? Are we doing language trees? Are we doing, what's the common kind of tasks? And the common tasks that are supported by XLingPaper are lists of words and their glosses, interlinear clauses, headings for an example, automatically wrapping in interlinear texts, abbreviations used in glosses and interlinears, hyperlinks between example numbers and their inline in the texts, the example numbers and their examples, so you can click between those, abbreviations used in interlinear glosses and their definitions of those those abbreviations and some linkage between those. Those are quite common in the types of documents that XLingPaper users author. So by way of an example, here's an interlinear example. So you can see the example XQN, and then we have 2 tiers of that. And that's just inside of a section. So section 2.11. And we then, that's what it looks like in the user interface. And then we'll see in a few minutes what it renders to be. Here's a little bit more of a more complex example. You can see that in these 2 interlinear lines, the first text, there are 2 lines of text. The first one is like a practical orthography. The second one is an IPA rendering, which linguists use this for phonetic description or a rough phonological description. Then you have some grammatical annotations, and then the yellow there is the green and yellow. What the yellow specifically are abbreviations, and then you have a translation into Spanish, and you have a note there as well. So these backgrounds in the user interface help you navigate where you're at. With the if you're in an example might show up as a particular color, or EndNote shows up as a particular color. So there's some support for that in the and that comes from XLingPaper and XMLMind. But when we look at these examples in an output, here's section 2.11, and you can see you can choose the color of your text and the output and your styles and such like that. But it's often the case that you can see that examples might have 2 components. So we have example number 2 in this document, and then we have example A and example B, and you can see how there's some alignment in between the green tier and the red tier in 2B. And then we have a practice of, in linguistics, for on the right hand side, the blue link, like Samjin 6 or FC 5.1. These are basically references to another text that would have where these would be sourced from. So this keeping those references automated, not just for the references at the end of a document to like other published materials, but also to texts and corpora, is also important within linguistics as well. And then obviously then we have several lists going on too, like a list of A and B, and section 2.1, 2.11, and then example 2. So keeping track of those things is, for me as an author, has been really beneficial to let the software automate that. So here's an example of the output of several abbreviations. You can see this Zila text produced PDF. Let's see. Yeah, so if a reader of the PDF abbreviation reference wants to, let's say it was in the text, let's go back. So if it were in the EST right here, if I wanted to see what the EST in section 2. In example 2B was, I could click that, and then it would take me to a section like this that would then show what that was. And I could see my abbreviations. And there's different ways of formatting this. You can do it linear like this, or you can do it as a table, and both are supported. So here's another example of a text inside the user interface of XMLMind. And then here's how it would look when rendered. And this is a story that's told and separated by clause for grammatical parts and things like this. So this is fairly typical for what a linguist might want to read it and understand how the grammar is working. Some other typesetting tasks that XLingPaper users often encounter are tables and font rendering. Using Unicode fonts is highly encouraged. Hyphenation for non-English languages is an issue that several users have encountered and avail themselves of those tools. Authors' contact information is often important, and is important when you're doing stuff across different documents, it makes it easy to do that. Vertical fill and blank page. Those are all important tasks. Here's an example of using a font and to do the IPA pitch. So on the left side, we see from an African language, Mbo. And this one is, you can see that the blue area is the root word, and then they have a frame, and they're looking at the pitch, the tonal pitch, and they're going to write the pitch there on the right-hand side, and you can see that in the gray. And let's render this for you. So here's the example and 11 in that paper, and you can see that there's sub examples, I guess, enumerated A through I, and then you can see with the pitch trace lines across the on the right hand side. So you have on the left you have the word and the frame, and then on the right side you have the pitch. So that's the type of typesetting that's often done with XLingPaper and using ZLaTeX to do that. So thank you for listening to our presentation today about XLingPaper. We are available for questions. You can check out the software at XLingPaper's website, https://software.sil.org/XLingPaper. But then you can also, let's see, contact me or Andy Black, and here's our emails. Let's see. Yeah. So there we go. So Black handrew@gmail.com or I@hp3.me. And we'd love to hear your comments and feedbacks. And thank you for listening to our presentation.